All right, over here on the bottom left, a member of the team I am. He is.
I am happy.
His opponent up at the top right, a Zerg player, sometimes plays Protoss. He is.
Lucky fOu.
It's actually a lot of Korean players, when they ladder, they just take practice seriously. They do it within their team. They don't really ladder that much, and when they do ladder, they off race. Trickster, a lot of TSL players, in fact, Trickster and Songho both off race when they ladder. Whenever our players hit them on the ladder, they're usually off racing, which is kind of strange, and they actually do really well off race as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're switching races or anything like that. I think they just want to play against their race as their opponent's race in the matchup they struggle with. So what a lot of players did in StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 as well. When if you're good and you understand the game really well, you, for example, if you're struggling with PvT, you play as Terran versus a Protoss and say, oh, this is the timing, or like, I feel when I can pressure, because this is when he just pressured me and I felt like really vulnerable. Yeah, so you see that a lot.
It's very important to understand the weaknesses of your opponent, and the only real way of doing that is to play the race yourself. A lot of these top-level Korean players have the mechanics to be able to play any race, no problem. And Losira at MLG was actually toying with the idea of playing Terran, because a lot of the IM players tell him that his Terran versus Zerg is actually better than a Zerg versus Zerg. But obviously he's strong with all of the matchups as well.
Yep. So we do see a hatchery first here. And that is pretty normal on this map, although this map's natural is relatively wide open, and the natural itself is actually kind of far from the ramp. So can be risky, but of course he knows already right off the bat this opponent is going to be doing some sort of fast expand build, because there's no second barracks, there's no command center. No, he's going to want to check for proxies, because if you scout this, don't always automatically assume, but Wolf told you that's going to be a fast expand. It could be hidden barracks somewhere on the map, and it could be a TLO style all-in where you make like 5 more barracks inside of your base after the drone leaves. Could be that.
There are a lot of different things that the Terran player can do, and that's one of the weaknesses of Zerg early on. Is it's very difficult for them to scout a Zerg, or for them to scout a Terran player. You really need to wait until you can get those overlords in later on when you have speed or overseers.
Right. Now, the Terran did see the hatch first, and that prompted him to make his command center at the natural rather than make it inside of his base. I like that choice. Because a lot of Terrans just like to make it inside the base because it's safer, but when your opponent goes hatchery first, you absolutely can make it outside. You just have enough Marines out in time, and it's absolutely possible. So I like that choice.
We do have a command center and another barracks coming down for our Terran player here.
Yeah, he has added a second barracks as well. Not going to get his gases right away, because you can't really do the double gas immediately after the command center if you make the command center down there on the low ground, because even if you just have one bunker full of Marines, you might need more than that, so you have to play it a little bit safer. You can't just immediately double gas.
Yeah.
The bunker is finishing up, and now a few Zerglings have been sent out around the map through the center, at the watchtowers as well, and even this SCV. Gonna try to take
almost gonna get away with those minerals, yeah. He might be able to make it, however, speed has just started, so should be okay.
Should be indeed. And that Zergling actually gonna run a little bit too close to those Marines. The Zerglings, like you said, they don't have speed just yet, so they do have to retreat.
Lucky not getting too lucky there.
I like what you did there, Torch.
Ooh.
Now, right now, it actually has added a third barracks. Does have those double gases up now. May add a factory, or may add some tech labs and start getting upgrades. Usually, when you see that, you see 4 barracks, but 3 barracks, I think most likely we'll see a factory.
He is keeping a lot of his SCVs at his main. What this does is it allows you to keep most of them safe. If Banelings come in or Zerglings try to run in, you don't have to pull quite as many, and your risk isn't quite there. However, you are going to mine out your main base a little bit faster than your expansion. So if you do push it into a longer based game, you are going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage.
That's true. Now the factory has started for Happy. As I was saying, and most likely he's gonna add a second factory. He's doing the Karn build. I just want to get Karn famously talk about him all the time whenever there's 2 factories. In TVZ, Karn, a French player who tried to qualify for Code A, did quite well, lost to next Naya in the qualifiers, but he's actually one of my good friends, and he loves to do this build, get double factories. One of them researches Blue Flame Hellions, and then the other, of course, just produces Hellions. You make a ton of Hellions to control the map, take a third base. Eventually, you get Thors and tanks as according to what your opponent is doing. So,
yeah, and I remember him working on that build with Spades when he was in the guest house, and it just shows how a lot of different builds that you can develop can be developed a lot faster if you're working with people. However, these Marines are going to notice the third of the Zerg player going down. They're going to get surrounded, but there's just way too many of them. Only a few go down to these Zerglings, and now they're going to be able to take out this expansion quite easily. The reinforcements from the Zerg player aren't quite up quite yet, and I'm going to say quite a few more times.
I like this move by Happy. He's going to put these Marines in a spot where they can't easily be surrounded, but yet they can still hit the hatchery. A great move. Back at home, he is researching Blue Flame, as I mentioned, and the hatchery does finish. He didn't cancel it.
Didn't cancel it, but he does have some reinforcements in here. If he could get them to stop the Marines, he's not going to be able to do it. However, he's going to be able to kill the Marines without making too many Zergling losses. It is a good trade for the Terran player to prevent that third from staying up.
Yeah, not only did he kill the third, but he killed a lot of Zerglings in the process. Forced a lot of Zerglings. Those are all Zerglings that could have been drones. Didn't even cancel the hatchery, so he lost those minerals. So it was a great move there by Happy. Now he's got a few Hellions out. Right now his opponent does have a Roach Warren, but he hasn't made any Roaches just yet.
And Lucky's standing army isn't all that big, so he can't even do a counterattack yet. He is moving a bit of Zerglings off on the map to make sure he still gains map control, but he's not able to push in, especially with those Blue Flame Hellions there. And
in fact, he's added a third factory. He's really doing the Karn build. Add the third factory, then eventually once you get 3 bases, you just make Thors off of 3 factories. That's how Karn does it. But anyway, these Hellions are about to have Blue Flame. They could get caught by these Zerglings, just barely escaped there. That was a close call. Luckily for them, they did have that watchtower.
They did have the watchtower, and they do have that little wall there that they can just circle around almost indefinitely.
Yep. Now, Roach speed is being researched, and 6 Roaches are about to pop here for our Zerg player. So that indicates that he does really want to use Roaches into the mid and late game. But right now, Armory is done. +1 armor for vehicles, weapons being researched, or for vehicles themselves, plating, I should say. Hold that thought. Here come the Hellions.
Ooh, that's a quick roast of a lot of those Zerglings. Going to force the rest of them to run away. You really can't do a whole lot with it. However, these Roaches are going to make sure that no drone losses get taken.
Yeah.
He did scout the third, so he does know exactly what's going on. However, he is probably assuming that there might be some air coming soon, but none is on the way.
Now, the idea behind this build is to kind of force Roaches and then sort of make Siege Tanks and Thors. And if your opponent makes Mutas, then the Thors are quite good against that as well.
Yep.
So he is getting +1 armor plating for those vehicles, like I was saying, and he's got 3 Thors in production right now. Just one of them popping out now. And it's really difficult to support this off of just 2 bases, but I think he's going to use the Thors and the Hellions to either do a timing attack or to safely secure his third base.
And the thing is, you are extremely efficient on 2 bases compared to the Zerg player, so as long as you keep him from actually mining at his third, then you really have a pretty good advantage moving into the mid-game.
It's very true. And that plating getting pretty close to being done. So is combat shields for those Marines. There are a few Marines out on the map, so he's going to probably bring those as well just to add some DPS, do some support. These Hellions being very annoying. Every time the Zerg tries to move out, the Hellions come in and try to go at his drones, so he actually has no drones mining at that third base.
And the Spire is starting to go up right now, so it's going to give him a little bit of flexibility, but once he sees how many Thors are out there and that they're being upgraded.
Oh, and he's bringing SCVs with these Thors to repair them, and they do have +1 plating. These Thors are going to be so difficult to deal with. Torch, this is actually really scary.
This is a very scary army, however, it is also a very immobile army. So if the Zerg player times it right, he can actually run by, do a little bit of damage, and then run back to defend his main.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point. Happy did salvage his bunker. So Lucky may get lucky and run around there and do a little counterattack. He knows what's coming now, and Overlord did see it.
He is going to run a bit of forces back here. I don't know if he's going to be trying to circle around or if he's going to do a counterattack.
Yeah, the Thor's struggling to join up with the army. Looks like he does want to do a counterattack. This could get messy really quickly here because Happy does not have a lot to defend this. There are so many banelings. They do have speed running forward here.
He does get the bust. He is going to move in. He's going to take out these Marines pretty quickly. Gets a lot of SCVs. However, the SCVs are circling around the Thor, keeping it alive. Meanwhile, he is attacking in the third of Lucky. Going to try to do as much damage as he can. However, these supply depots were down, allowing the Zerg army to get into the main of Happy. This is not a very good position to be in. However, he does have a lot of SCVs, and he is able to repair. It's not going to survive, but it might be able to take down enough of the Roaches so that the reinforcements of Happy can keep him alive. Meanwhile, his army is moving across, took out the third of the Zerg player, and is able to move along here, roast the drones that were trying to get back, and that is a lot of Thors. Oh my god.
Yeah, there's so many Thors. Remember, he does have SCVs repairing them, but he barely has any income. He's actually repairing so quickly, he's running out of money. He lost so many SCVs. It's 42 drones and 21 SCVs. Basically, he has to end the game with this push, or at least kill this hatchery and most of the army, but I think he may do just that, Torch.
Yes, he may. There are 7 more Roaches on the way for the Zerg player. If he times this right, he might be able to take out this army, but it's going to be extremely close. Roaches are quite good against Thors, but now with so many SCVs and Marines mixed into that fight, wow.
Yeah, and these Thors, there are just so many of them, and like you said, and they do have +1 plating, and he's just breaking up the ramp at this point. There are so many spine crawlers at the top, so he's going to actually decide to back up for now and just contain his opponent. And even though he lost a lot of SCVs, he's done so much damage with it that it's okay. And when I said earlier, he needs to end the game with this push. The game is practically ended from this push. There's almost nothing the Zerg can do to break out from this. I liked his choice of bringing the Banelings with his army, because otherwise those Roaches would have never killed the Thors that were defending the base, because the SCVs would have just repaired forever. But with those Banelings, the Banelings blew up the SCVs. So not only did he stop the repair, but he did damage to the SCVs and the Thors.
Yep. And the interesting thing is there's a lot of drones out here for the Zerg player, but he's only on 1 base, so he can't use any of them. A lot of them are just sitting there mining on the same patch.
It looks like he's making a ton of Banelings here. He may try to go for a bust. It might work, but it is going to be relatively risky. He doesn't actually want to do that. You know, I mean, like, it's something that he realizes he might have to do, but it's something he's going to be reluctant to do. This one Thor actually starting to go to work on these tech structures, which are already dying because they're not on creep. And he's going to most likely try to bust. Here he goes. The Roaches at the front. No, he switches them. Banelings at the front now, and the Marines not going to be split well. They don't have stim, and all the Marines do die. The Roaches doing a decent amount of damage. There are no SCVs to repair, but are there enough Thors? I think there just might be. It's going to be pretty close. The Roach is falling very quickly now, and I think that with that +1 attack finishing up for these Thors, this may be the end for Lucky.
So Lucky does have a lot of minerals left, however, he doesn't have the production capabilities because he is only on 1 hatch. He doesn't have the larva. He's trying to set up another hatch there so he gets a bit more larva, but he also does not have a Baneling nest, so Zerglings themselves are not going to be too great against this army coming out here from Happy.
Yeah, these Thors doing so much damage to the Spine Crawlers, even though the Spine Crawlers, there's so many of them. The Thors have pretty decent range, even those Hellions backing them up, killing those Zerglings. And the Mules dropping down here to help repair, and maybe even a diss, but I think they're just there for repair. Are going to help repair these Thors. No, they're just going to go and diss him, man.
Steal his minerals, mine him out a little bit faster. In a game like this, it might actually be the little bit of edge that you need to embarrass your player a little bit more.
Exactly. And even the Hellions cleaning it up. GG!
Happy takes it to 2-0 for Incredible Miracle. Almost a smile. Not quite.
Not quite. Just mildly happy. And Lucky looks a little bit disappointed with that result, but these things happen. I mean, he played against someone who did the right build for the right map, I think.
Yeah, and that counterattack that he did when Happy was moving his main army across the field almost worked. It almost turned it into a base trade situation, but the repair on the Thor actually helped him to defend. Happy, actually looking happy now. Yeah,
and that +1 plating for the vehicles was really strong. Not only does it help Thors, but it keeps the Hellions alive a little bit longer. You notice there were a lot of Hellions just kind of lurking around the end of that fight, and even though Hellions do terrible against Roaches, they do start to add up a little bit when you've got that one flame hitting several times over the Roaches. You micro them to the side. That does sort of add up, and it helps against buffering against the Speedlings. The Speedlings do pretty well against Thors as well. I mean, when you have enough of them and they're surrounding them, but if you have Hellions there, it's just never going to happen.
And it did seem like fOu was focusing a lot on the Thors and ignoring the Marines and the Hellions, where the Marines and the Hellions were doing the real damage, and the Thors and the SCVs were just there to tank.
Exactly.
So not exactly the best micro in the battle, and maybe it was because he was focused on 2 different battles at the same time.
And I like his decision to use that map. It's a map that's not very big. You can't really do that strategy on a map that's larger because you don't have that army is just very immobile. Sure, the Hellions are mobile, sure they help you control the map, but if it's a larger map like Crevasse and your opponent hides bases and makes mutas, you can't be everywhere at once. You can't just like kill that 1/3 base because there's going to be another one somewhere else. But on a map like Dual Site, it's a really good strategy. I like it.
Yeah, and really good timings from him as well. If he'd waited a little bit longer, that third would have been up. The mineral increase would have really given the army advantage to the Zerg player, but Happy moved out right at the right time.
Yeah, he had some really good knowledge at times. I think if he hadn't salvaged his bunkers and just left a few Marines behind, it would have been a little bit better. I mean, he still would have lost them, but he would have been able to defend even easier, saved maybe some more SCVs, maybe used a few more Banelings. But even so, that was such a good timing. He realized, he knew the inevitability would be, you're either going to try to defend this, and I'm going to hopefully crush through you, or you're going to counterattack. He knew that possibility was there, and he still reacted accordingly.
Yep, very true.
So, fOu down 2-0 is really going to hurt their mentality. We don't know who they're going to send out next.
Well, they still got Choya, they still got Linak, still have Gumio, still have SC.
And we're about to find out who it's going to be. Who is it? Is that a fake or is it the real one?
I don't know. They focused in on SU there. So.
Well, it's actually him. It's Gumiho, the clone of Leenock.
Isn't Gumiho older?
Oh, actually, I believe so. You'll see him in just a second. He looks pretty similar to Leenock.
Yeah, both angry players here. The angry nerd stompers. So.
And Happy meditates about it. You can see he looks like a different version of Leenock. He looks, I mean, he doesn't look that similar, but everyone teases him about it, so I just can't help but see the resemblance. If someone hadn't told me that, I probably wouldn't have thought of it. He's not wearing his glasses today, someone told me, so
maybe that's a way to combat the appearance similarities that are going on.
I'm sure Leenock's upset about that. Though you'll notice right off the bat that Gumiho is no longer playing random. He's actually switched to Terran. So
good choice.
That's something interesting to note. He used to play random. He actually was the first player in the very first team league he played random and lost, I remember. But he's since switched to Terran. A lot of players who play random don't do very well until they find a race that they really connect with. And some teams, players like switch to random, switch to Terran, switch back, switch to Zerg, and switch back to Terran, then switch back to random, then switch back to Terran. There's a player like that out there in the forum scene.
Who he is. Doing quite well.
Yeah, he actually is taking a break right now. We're talking, of course, about Liquid TLO, but he's done so much for the community. He's pushed builds forward, and he's definitely someone to look up to, I'd say.
He's continuing to do a lot.
All right, we are going to have a 2-minute break, and when we get back, we'll continue the GSTL Venus here with Wolf and Torch. See you guys in 2 minutes.